In this next video, we're going to be looking at, we're at the start of Unit 4 now, we're going to be looking at if, else statements. And in Python, they call them if, elif, else statements. I don't know why. I didn't make this programming language, but whatever. So what we've got over here is our same program we've been using the past couple of videos. We've got our nervous face as it's going up the roller coaster, our happy face when we're going down the roller coaster. And I want to add one more thing, which is what if, we end up over here? Or if it keeps going, we end up over here. I think what I want to put is like a surprised face. But right now with if and else as our options, we sort of effectively, not entirely effectively, have two options we can choose. I say not entirely because we do have the option to do multiple if statements. I can have an if and then just afterwards another if. But if, elif, else statements give us even more control of the flow of our program. So let's go ahead and change this up a little bit, and then we'll talk about the anatomy of an if, elif, else statement. So if statement, if else statement has an if part. If that part is true, I do the part indented underneath it. And it can be more than one line as we've seen before. Otherwise, if it's not true, we will skip that. If there's no else statement, then we just skipped it and we kept going on in our program. If there was an else statement, we'll skip the if and then do the else. What we're going to add now is an elif, which is kind of like one if right after another. It has multiple checks to see what's going on, but it doesn't work exactly the same as just one if after another if statement. And hopefully we can kind of draw that out, come up with an example of draw that out over here. So I think actually the way I need to do this is I'm going to switch this if to an elif, and then I'm going to make a new if, and I'm going to say if my y is less than, 0 at the top. So if my y is less than 200, then I'm going to draw a surprised face at x, y. And I think while I'm at it right here, just to make it a little easier to understand, I'm going to switch all this stuff to mouse x, mouse y, which means I need to refer to the correct variables here. Mouse x, mouse y, mouse x, mouse x, oops, mouse y. Ooh, let's be lazy. Bop. Okay. Now the only issue is I gotta go add my surprise face, which I think I'll make my surprise face. It's not too hard to make. So I'll define surprised face with a x and y. And I'm pretty sure that's just going to be this part of the smiley face. Again, copy and paste in other bits of code. Not always the best, but whatever. I'm trying to make my videos as short as I can. So now, if I run my program, so far, so good. Looking okay, looking okay. And maybe I should change this to a different number, because if I'm like just up over here, it's going to be, ooh, okay. It is angry at me. Oh, because I'm using all face X and face Y over here. All right, well, right. That's the issue with copy and paste, kids. I guess I'll just change this to face X and face Y. Well, hopefully we get to this later in CMU as we learn deeper and deeper how the programming language works. I can reuse variable names because they're local variables versus global. This face Y exists only inside of the happy face function. This is a different version of face Y that exists only inside of the surprised face function. But more of that later. Also, I was saying maybe I should make this less than, let's make it like 150 so you're really off of the roller coaster. Let's try running this again. Nervous faces were going up, looking great. And then as we're going down, we're happy. But let's say we ended up over here. Oh, we're surprised. Great. So now with if, elif, else, we got multiple different choices that we can use. And if you check the notes on CMU, which this notes is pretty good and I think easy enough to understand, You can have as many Elifs as you like. You can keep making Elifs and keep checking things. You're only allowed to have, for an if statement, you're only allowed to have one if and one else, but in between, you can have as many Elifs as you please. Let's make one more Elif, and let's say Elif the mouse x is greater than 390. And just to show that you can do some kind of, weird stuff and have multiple Elifs, I will just, if we're greater than 390, I'm going to make a red circle over there. So I'm going to make a circle at mouse x, mouse y. It'll be a radius of 20, and the fill will equal red. And okay, so let's see. I've got my nervous face. I got my happy faces. I'm surprised. We went flying off the roller coaster. And if my mouse x is greater than 390, 354, right? We're still happy. Now right here, my mouse x, you can see is 391. It's going to make a red circle. So let's take a screenshot of this, head over to the Jamboard and draw some stuff out. So bada bing, bada boom, time it, boom, got the cursor out of there. Let's go take a look. New page, that was from the previous video. Okay, pasting this, making it a little bit larger so that we can draw on it. And let's get to it. Let's move up over here. Okay, so the way an if, elif, else, or just kind of the way things generally work is, as always in programming, things go from the top to the bottom. When we're using if statements, we're actually kind of breaking that rule a little bit, right? We're skipping parts of the code. And when we're using functions too, we're jumping around a little bit too. But whoops. Well, whatever. You're gonna see me eject the USB. Eject that. And that way, ooh, sorry for smacking the mic there, because I didn't have my stylus pad plugged in, and it should be plugged in now. Okay, great. So now let's get the pen going over here. I want a pen. Okay. So where was I? The way an if elif statement works is it always is going to check our ifs and else ifs going from top to bottom. So the first thing that this program did was, we get to the if statement, it's going to check, is my mouse y coordinate lower than 150? Let's come over this way. So in the case of these guys, my y is 233. That's not lower than 150. Here, the y is 213. That's not lower than 150. The y is 291. That's not lower than 150. But up here, the y is 33. That is lower than 150. So if this is true, just like always, we will go and do that part. Once we've done a single if or a single else if, once you're done with this, you skip everything else, not just the else, but all the other things inside of this if block, and you continue your code afterwards. And that is true no matter where you end up going. So, and that's a really important part, right? This is the power of if elif as opposed to just ifs. This is checking if my mouse is less than 150, I will do this part over here and skip the rest of my if elif block. So for example, and let me zoom out a teeny bit just so we can see. I'll move over here a little bit. Let me rerun the code. Here, the x's or the y is not less than 150, so we're drawing our nervous face and our smiley face. Here, the y is greater than 150, but also it's a surprised face here. And maybe you're like, yeah, okay, of course, the y is less than 150, right? I can see the y is 26 in the bottom right corner there. But here also, the x is 50, right? And don't I have in my if statement, or in my, one of my elif says, well, else if the mouse is less than 200, shouldn't I be making it a nervous face? And so here, right here's the thing about if elif, is whichever one happens first, that's all that happens in that block. We skip the rest. If my mouse is less than 150, if it's high up enough there, it does not care about the X being less than 200 or being greater than 390. Once I go into one if within an if block or one elif within an if block, I do what's in there and then I skip the rest of them. In the case of a nervous face, if I, so the mouse is not less than 150, we'll skip on to the elif. And then if the mouse is less than 200, so like over here, mouse X, I should be saying, then it creates the nervous face. Once I create the nervous face, right, this elif is true, and it passed that if originally before, do that, skip everything underneath it. And that's how an if elif works. The only way to get to my red circle is once this doesn't happen, my y is not smaller than 150, my x is not smaller than 200, and then my mouse x is greater than 390, then it will do this and skip out of there. So you have to be careful about the order you do these things. And then finally, if none of these were true, we'll do the else, the happy face, and then you just keep moving on. That's the last thing in the block. Should I show more examples? I don't know. I think that was thorough enough. The idea of an if, elif, elif, else being different than separate ifs is that you only do one of these things, right? If I didn't have, and maybe we can just see this right over here, and by maybe I mean let's see it, is let's say this red, making this red circle here is kind of weird, right? Like we have a nervous face, there's a happy face, a surprise face. This red circle is kind of weird, so maybe I'll just take it out of my if elif block, and now I just have an if elif and an else. I can put my elif over here, sorta, right? You're not allowed to start with an elif. You always have to start with an if, and if you want it, you always have to end with a single else. That's only if you want an else. You're only allowed one if and one else per kind of block of per if block. If I want to make a separate if block, that's fine, but then notice some weird stuff's going to happen here, right? Because this is a new if block. It's not part of this larger if, elif, else block. Two things can happen at once. So for example, I'm going to make it happen where when my mouse Y is less than 150, but my mouse X is greater than 390, well, it's going to draw the surprise face, and then it's going to draw a red circle on top of it. So let's see that happen. So here we've got all of this nonsense working. The nervous face is working. That's all great. Surprise face up here looking good. If I go all the way past 390, it's going to be a surprise face with a red dot on top. Similarly, right, this is the difference between the if elif and having just a separate if block underneath. Not that one's better than the other. I'm just trying to show you that you have the control over what you're doing with your code. And I'm trying to help you understand how these blocks work. It's making the red circle there because the Y was less than 150, so it's going to do this part, skip the rest of the elif and else, because that's what happens once you do one part of an if block, it skips everything else. But then you keep going along, your program's happily moving down. Oh, I see a new if block. This was not part of the old if block, so I'm going to check it on its own merits. Oh, the mouse was greater than 390, the mouse X is greater than 390, we'll draw a red circle. We can have that happen with the happy face as well, because the happy face just needs, it doesn't care if the Y, it doesn't care about the Y, right? It's just, all right, all the other stuff before it was broken, well, we'll do this. That else statement, so that was, what we just did there, was the Y was not less than 150, the X was not less than 200, so else, otherwise, we're just drawing a happy face. New if block, the X was greater than 390, we're drawing the red on top of it. If you didn't get it before, I hope that this helped you understand how exactly an if, elif, else blocks work. And then also even seeing you can have multiple different ifs going all over the place. If you want to get crazy, right? If you want to get crazy, and maybe this is referenced later, you can nest if statements. You can nest lots of things. I can put an if statement inside of an if statement and, do all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm not going to do it in this video, but just to show you, you have control, right? You're the programmer. You can do what you want. Once you understand how exactly these if blocks work, these if else, these if elif else, these if elif 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 else blocks work, recognizing that you can have multiple blocks one after the other, you get to really have some powerful control over your programs, and you can make some really neat stuff. Alrighty. I'm guessing maybe I should make this at the end of every video. The other video I thought was 20 minutes. That was only like 15, 16. I'm probably hovering somewhere around like 12 minutes. Let's see if I got this right. All right. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.